The world felt like it was made of cheap paper the moment Julian Vance understood it was a work of fiction, a poorly written romance novel to be exact. He knew this with a sudden, gut-wrenching certainty as he listened to the novel's hero, Leo Carter, inform him with a voice of bored indifference that his family's company was bankrupt. A cold fury, sharp and metallic, bloomed in Julian's chest. It was a cosmic joke that he, a 28-year-old man of considerable talent and ambition, was cast as a disposable antagonist. And what an insult that his lifelong rival, the perpetually sanctimonious Leo Carter, was designated the heroic lead. From his throne-like executive chair, Leo observed him with an unnerving stillness. A single eyebrow arched in silent challenge. He suggested, with a hint of a smirk, that Julian could always beg for his help. Julian's own lips moved, a faint tremor he couldn't control, almost forming the words the script demanded. The original character was meant to plead. But Julian Vance, the man trapped inside the role, would never bend. Fueled by a potent mix of rage and sheer absurdity, he snatched the heavy crystal tumbler from the polished mahogany desk and hurled its contents at Leo's impassive face. The world dissolved. The sharp lines of the penthouse office warped and bled like watercolor in a downpour. As his consciousness frayed, a synthetic female voice echoed in the void, announcing an alert. A textual error had been detected. A system refresh was now initiating. He was not erased. He was back, a decade younger, standing in the grimy alley behind a fraternity house. The stench of stale beer and overflowing dumpsters filled the air. He watched, stunned, as a group of hulking figures laid into a much thinner, younger Leo Carter. This was their first meeting. In the previous iteration, the script had compelled him to walk away. This time he stopped. He pulled out his phone, the sleek metal cool against his palm. He announced with theatrical boredom that he had the cops on speed dial and they should probably make themselves scarce. He wanted to see how far he could push the boundaries of this narrative before it shattered completely. After the thugs scrambled away, Leo remained motionless on the cracked pavement. Julian approached, his shadow falling over the crumpled form. Leo's university sweatshirt was faded, stained with mud and blood, showing none of the immaculate polish of the future corporate titan. His profile, however, was sharp and clean, a decade of cynicism not yet etched into his features. Julian nudged him with the toe of his expensive leather shoe, asking if he was dead. He couldn't help but add that Leo's waist was surprisingly trim. Leo didn't move, but the hand splayed on the asphalt slowly curled into a tight fist. A dark amusement curled Julian's lips. So, the great Leo Carter had moments of weakness too. A wicked thought took root. If bankruptcy was his worst possible fate, then a little preemptive humiliation of its architect couldn't make things any worse. He leaned down and mused aloud, wondering if Leo would like his designer backpack stuffed with $100 bills. Leo remained silent, probably thinking Julian was insane. Julian found the silence entertaining. He proposed a deal, telling Leo that if he became his personal errand boy, he would give him $50,000 a month. Julian added the last part for emphasis. He knew from his university days that Leo was the only student on a full scholarship, struggling to cover tuition and his mother's medical bills. Julian had never lacked for anything, especially money. Seeing no reaction, he made a show of turning to leave. 2 seconds later, a faint voice called for him to wait. A triumphant smile played on Julian's lips as he turned back. After years of competing with him, Julian knew that men like Leo were like spiders. They would cling to any thread of survival. He would agree to any demand, no matter how degrading. Leo had staggered to his feet. Julian was certain that if he had actually walked away, Leo would have chased after him. He watched him, waiting. Leo coughed, spitting a trickle of blood onto the ground. His gaze shadowed and pale. He finally agreed. Julian then clarified that Leo would have to do whatever he was told. Leo's confirmation was a low, guttural sound. Julian's smile widened into a grin. Then he told him he should crawl over and prove how obedient he could be. Leo's compliance was a heady drug. Julian decided to take him shopping to mold him into something more presentable. He had to admit, Leo was a natural mannequin. The tailored clothes accentuated his long limbs and slender waist, lending him an air of aristocratic grace that belied his origins. The bright, direct lighting of the luxury boutique bathed them both in a golden halo. Standing behind Leo, his arms crossed, Julian watched with satisfaction as a flicker of bewilderment crossed Leo's reflection in the mirror. Leo kept tugging at the collar of the silk shirt, trying to close the deliberately plunging neckline. Julian had to stifle a laugh. He never imagined the younger Leo could be so easily flustered, a far more interesting creature than the calculating predator he would become. A sales associate approached, murmuring to Leo that the shirt was designed to showcase his physique. Leo flinched away from her offered hand. His lips pressed into a thin line as he looked at Julian, a silent plea in his eyes. He looked like a startled animal. The feeling of absolute control was intoxicating. Just as Julian was about to tell the associate to find something else, a loud, obnoxious voice cut through the quiet store. It was Chad, a classmate of Julian's, holding a large iced coffee. He stared, baffled, at the sight of Julian with Leo. He wondered aloud what Julian was doing with the campus charity case. Julian replied lazily that Leo was just a new amusement. Chad laughed, asking if Julian was actually buying clothes for him. Julian confirmed it was a reward for good behavior. As he spoke, he noticed Leo neatly folding his old, blood-stained clothes and placing them in a paper bag. A wave of disgust washed over Julian. He told him to throw the filthy things away. For the first time, Leo's hand stilled. He refused. After Julian had just boasted of his obedience, the defiance was a public slap in the face. Chad covered his mouth to hide a smirk. Annoyance flared hot in Julian's gut. He strode forward, grabbing the silk ribbon of Leo's tie and yanking him down. Leo's broad shoulders were forced to stoop, making him look like a large dog on a tight leash. Julian reminded him in a low, menacing whisper not to forget their arrangement. Leo stared back, his dark eyes bottomless, a wild and untamed beast lurking in their depths. Julian cut him off before he could speak, stating plainly that Leo had no right to refuse him, unless he wanted his life to become even more miserable. Leo's jaw tightened. The hand clutching the paper bag trembled. Julian guessed he was remembering things he'd rather forget, but that was of no concern to him. He only wanted submission. He released the tie and stepped back. He prompted him, asking what he was supposed to do now. A second later, as if a switch had been flipped, Leo's hand went limp. The paper bag fell to the marble floor with a soft thud. He said, his voice flat, that he would listen. Chad joined them, and the three of them browsed, their conversation a light-hearted stream of campus gossip, punctuated by shared, disdainful glances at Leo, who followed 2 paces behind, laden with Julian's shopping bags. In one store, Julian spotted a pair of limited-run designer high tops. The sales associate, recognizing him, was effusive, fetching his size at once. She knelt before him, ready to help him try them on. Chad, lounging on a nearby sofa, spoke up. He suggested with a malicious grin that a task like that was what Leo was for. Julian agreed it was a fine idea. He turned to Leo and ordered him to put the shoes on for him. Leo walked over and took the shoe from the associate. He bent at the waist, his tall frame looming over Julian, casting him completely in shadow. All Julian could see were Leo's dark, intense features. A sudden, sharp sense of danger, a feeling of being prey, made him flinch back as if scalded. For a terrifying moment, he saw the Leo from 10 years in the future, the man who had so calmly declared his ruin. It had to be post-traumatic stress, he reasoned. Leo was the protagonist. The rules of the world revolved around him. He couldn't have traveled back in time too. If he had, he would never be so docile, so willing to be played with like a toy. Bolstered by this internal pep talk, Julian puffed out his chest and raised his voice, demanding to know who told him he could remain standing. Leo looked up, confused, the shoe still in his hand. Julian's face hardened as he told him to kneel. The command hung in the air. The store staff froze. Even Chad looked shocked. Leo's lips thinned into a blade-like line. Julian held his breath, a flicker of regret sparking within him. He hadn't thought it through. Pushing someone too far in public could have explosive consequences. But after a tense 10 seconds, Leo slowly straightened up. Then, like a rusted automaton, his knees began to bend. The distance between them shrank until Julian was looking down at the top of his head. He was on one knee before him. Julian let out a silent sigh of relief. Leo's long fingers untied Julian's shoelace. One hand supported the new shoe while the other gently cupped Julian's calf to guide his foot in. Leo suddenly spoke, his voice quiet. He murmured that Julian's ankles were surprisingly delicate. His dark eyes fixed on his leg with a strange intensity. A hot flush of something like shame and anger surged through Julian. He kicked out with his bare foot, striking Leo hard in the chest. Caught off balance, Leo toppled backward onto the floor. He didn't get up immediately, just stared at Julian from the ground, a look of genuine bewilderment on his face. Julian ripped the new shoe off his foot, stood up, and told him coldly not to say such disgusting things. Leo seemed utterly perplexed by his sudden rage. He blinked, then a tiny, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips before he agreed. In the dim, thumping chaos of a VIP lounge, one of Julian's friends gestured toward Leo. He asked Julian why he brought him everywhere. Julian glanced over at Leo, who was sitting perfectly straight, nursing a glass of juice, his expression as serious as a scientist observing an experiment. He looked utterly alien in the hedonistic environment. Julian propped his chin on his hand and smiled, explaining that he found Leo's behavior fascinating. He remarked that people are always curious about things they don't understand. The table erupted in laughter. Julian grinned and nudged Leo's leg with his foot, imperiously demanding a mango. Like a pre-programmed machine, Leo picked up a mango from the fruit platter and handed it to him. Julian snapped at him to peel it. Leo did so, his movements slow and reluctant. Julian grew annoyed, telling him coldly to cut up the entire platter. Leo's lips parted as if to protest, but Julian cut him off, him of the consequences of disobedience. With a deep sigh, Leo resigned himself to the task, and a small mountain of mango cubes began to grow. Just then, Chad swayed over, asking Julian if he would grace a formal dance party with his presence the following week. Julian popped a piece of mango into his mouth and agreed, telling Chad to get an invitation for Leo as well. Leo suddenly looked up, his face a blank mask, and stated that he was busy and wouldn't be going. Chad sked, informing him that Julian was inviting him as his date. Leo repeated his refusal. Chad finally smirked, glancing at Julian with feigned sympathy, remarking that it seemed the young master's kindness was being wasted. Julian, irritated, shot Chad a glare and casually dismissed Leo as just a stray dog he had taken pity on. The words had barely left his mouth when Leo shot to his feet. The silver fruit knife clattered onto the glass table, spinning with a menacing whir that drew gasps from the onlookers. "That was enough," he said. He gave Julian one last, cold look, then turned and strode out of the room. For the first time, Julian's control had slipped. His face burned with humiliation. He shouted for Leo to stop, but for the first time, his command was ignored. As Leo's back disappeared down the hallway, Julian's anger boiled over into a stream of curses. His friends didn't dare intervene, but a girl Julian barely knew frowned and told him to stop. The room fell silent. She looked at Julian, her expression disapproving. She asked if he hadn't noticed the red rash all over Leo's hands, or the way he had been subtly scratching them. The man was clearly having an allergic reaction, and yet Julian continued to humiliate him. She told him with undisguised contempt that Leo was obviously allergic to mangoes and asked if Julian really didn't know. The words struck Julian like a physical blow. The haze of alcohol evaporated instantly. He never knew. He vividly recalled that, in the future, whenever he visited Leo's office, the only thing on his desk was a specific brand of mango juice. He had mocked him for it, calling him a weirdo for serving mango juice instead of coffee. He had assumed Leo loved mangoes as much as he did. But if he was allergic, then that juice wasn't for him. The answer was obvious, but one Julian was terrified to acknowledge. If he did, the feelings he had kept buried across 2 lifetimes would become uncontrollable. Worse, Leo was genuinely angry. He no longer followed Julian around. He returned to his solitary routine, sitting alone in the front row of lectures, diligently taking notes. The only change was the angry red rash on his hands, a persistent, visible accusation. The guilt gnawed at Julian, reaching a crescendo when he learned that the reason Leo had refused the dance was because he had a long-standing appointment to visit his mother at her care facility. During a lunch break, Julian found Leo on a bench, eating a cold, hard bagel and drinking tap water from a bottle. It was his usual routine to save time and money for work. Julian walked up and held out a warm, fragrant lunchbox he had just bought. He cleared his throat and told him to eat it. Leo didn't even look up from his textbook. Julian's arm began to ache. Annoyed, he shoved the lunchbox onto Leo's lap and turned to leave. A few steps later, he heard a clatter. Leo had thrown the entire meal into a nearby trash can. Julian stared, then turned back, his teeth clenched. He told Leo that he would regret this. He found out which care facility Leo's mother was in and arranged for her to be moved to a private premium suite. It was the only way he could think to atone. He went there himself, carrying a bouquet of flowers and a fruit basket. Leo's mother had been in a persistent vegetative state since a car accident years ago, and the cost of her care was astronomical. This was why Leo worked so relentlessly. The room was quiet except for the rhythmic beeping of the monitors. Julian sat awkwardly, looking at the peaceful face of the woman in the bed. He remembered a scene from his previous life. Leo, kneeling before this woman's grave, a picture of utter devastation. He sighed and began to speak to her, confessing that he didn't know if she could hear him, but that he truly hoped she would live a long and healthy life. He explained that this would delay her son's heartbreak. He rambled on, telling her how hard Leo worked for her, and how he himself could only help in this roundabout, cruel way, afraid that giving Leo money directly would violate his character's rules and trigger another reset. The author of their world had made him a one-dimensional villain, and he felt that as long as he maintained that persona, he could survive. When he finally stood to leave, the door opened. It was Leo. Their eyes met, and Leo's expression instantly hardened into a mask of cold fury. He grabbed Julian's arm. His grip so tight Julian felt his bones might crack. He demanded to know what Julian was doing there. Julian, shocked and in pain, yelled that he was just visiting his mother. Leo froze, his gaze shifting past Julian to the flowers and fruit on the table. He slowly released his grip. Julian shoved him away, shouting about his ingratitude before storming out. By the night of the dance, Leo still hadn't contacted him. He had apparently not accepted the apology. Julian went alone, nursing a drink at the bar while couples swirled on the dance floor. Someone he vaguely knew asked him where Leo was. Julian took a sip of his whiskey and replied coolly that they shouldn't mention such a downer. A cheerful voice said hello. He turned to see a pretty girl in a sparkling dress smiling at him. She extended a hand, asking if his date had stood him up. When she confessed hers had as well, she proposed they dance together. Julian smiled, a genuine, calm smile, and told her that lying was not a becoming habit. The girl, Brooke, was not embarrassed. She just shrugged, admitting that she simply found him interesting and wanted to dance. A grandfather clock chimed the hour, signaling the official start of the festivities. Julian gave up on his foolish hope and offered her his arm. They moved to the center of the dance floor. At the end of the song, as they acknowledged the applause, Julian saw a familiar figure in the crowd. It was Leo. He was standing alone by the entrance in a black suit, clutching a bouquet of tulips. The suit was ill-fitting, clumsily pinned at the waist. He looked utterly lost, his eyes fixed on Julian with the heartbroken expression of an abandoned dog. Julian's heart clenched. He muttered an oath under his breath, made a quick excuse to Brooke, and left the ballroom. As he expected, Leo followed. He walked briskly through the gardens without looking back, finally sitting on a stone bench. He tilted his chin up, glaring at Leo. He called him an idiot and demanded to know why he was so late. Leo stood before him, head bowed, and apologized. He explained quietly that Julian had blocked his number, and he'd had to track down Chad just to find out where the party was. That was true. Julian had blocked him. An awkward cough escaped him. A faint melody, his favorite waltz, drifted from the ballroom. He snorted, telling Leo he would give him one more chance. He stood and held out his hand imperiously, commanding Leo to dance with him. The light returned to Leo's eyes. He bowed, a clumsy but earnest gesture, and said it would be his honor. They danced under the stars, the music a faint accompaniment to the rustle of leaves. As the music faded, they remained in the final pose, Leo's arm around his waist. Neither of them moved to pull away. It must have been the moonlight or the whiskey, but a single thought rose above all others. To hell with it. Even if the world reset again, it would be worth it. He looked up at Leo and ordered him to lower his head. Leo, though confused, complied. Then Julian stood on his toes and kissed him. Life with Leo was different. He was attentive, obedient in a way that was no longer about submission but devotion. One morning, Leo, usually more reliable than a food delivery app, was gone. A hunger pang twisted Julian's stomach, and he irritably called him. The familiar ringtone sounded from directly below his dorm. Stepping onto the balcony, he saw Leo on the lawn, holding a bag of breakfast and laughing with another young man, an expression of genuine warmth on his face. The railing felt ice-cold beneath Julian's suddenly numb fingers. Chad, brushing his teeth, came out onto the adjacent balcony and followed his gaze. He chuckled, asking if Julian was so possessive he couldn't even let Leo talk to other people. Julian didn't answer. He was frozen. He recognized the other man. His name was Skylar Reed, a young actor who, in 3 years, would become a superstar and the lead talent at Leo's future company. More importantly, he was the other protagonist of this novel. He was Leo's fated love. It seemed the narrative had a self-correcting mechanism. The main characters would be drawn to each other, and a side character like Julian was nothing more than a temporary obstacle. Another evening, Julian stood in the shadows as a sleek convertible pulled up. He watched Leo get out of the passenger seat. Skylar got out too, reaching over to straighten Leo's collar with an easy intimacy. They laughed together, bathed in the soft glow of twilight. Only Julian, the observer, remained stone-faced. After Skylar drove off, Leo finally saw him. Julian's voice was laced with sarcasm as he asked if he had interrupted something. Leo just smiled, the last rays of sunset reflected in his eyes, and remarked that Julian sounded jealous. Julian snapped at him not to be ridiculous and turned to walk away, but Leo caught his arm. He explained calmly that Skylar had offered to introduce him to investors, but that he had refused. He told Leo that he was confident he could succeed on his own. Julian felt the tension drain out of his body. He looked away, muttering that it had nothing to do with him. Leo smiled that same disarmingly earnest smile. He then added that he had also told Skylar that he was already in love with someone and didn't want any rumors that might cause that person to misunderstand. Julian's heart began to pound against his ribs, a frantic, hopeful rhythm. Leo looked down at him, his gaze soft and yielding. He asked Julian if he would be with him. Leo was a good partner. He was considerate and gentle, always putting Julian first. Skylar Reed vanished from their lives, a face seen only on screens. Julian should have felt secure, but instead, a creeping dread took hold. With the primary love story severed, the world seemed to be fighting back. Leo failed to secure the foundational contract that had launched his career in the first timeline. His startup began to crumble. The invisible hand of the narrative was pressing down on them, mocking their defiance. Leo spent longer and longer in front of his computer, his face illuminated by the screen's cold light, his arguments with his partners growing more desperate. Occasionally, he would look up at Julian, his eyes exhausted, and apologize for not being able to spend time with him. The guilt and fear in Julian's heart grew with each passing day. He cursed this world, this story. It was his fault. By staying with him, Leo's life was being ruined. He would never become the titan he was meant to be. Part of Julian should have been thrilled. This meant his own bankruptcy might be averted. But he couldn't stomach the thought of his happiness being built on the wreckage of another's destiny. He started having nightmares of the first timeline, of Leo, powerful and radiant, the jewels on his cufflinks flashing as he signed Julian's death warrant. He would wake in a cold sweat to find Leo still at his desk in the dark, chewing on a piece of cheap bread. One afternoon, a month later, Leo finally disbanded his team. He deleted the group chat and gave a self-deprecating smile. He said to Julian that it seemed he had been too naive and that dreams were not so easily achieved. He looked at Julian, his eyes bloodshot, and apologized. For the first time, Julian told him, with genuine sincerity, that he had nothing to be sorry for. In that moment, a decision crystallized. He had to return Leo's destiny to him. He forced a smile, the old, cruel one. He told him they should break up. He watched the light drain from Leo's eyes, his face freezing in shock. When Leo finally, brokenly asked why, Julian delivered the killing blow. He said, his voice as cold as he could make it, that it was because Leo was a broke, pathetic failure, and Julian was bored. He blocked Leo on everything and warned his friends not to tell Leo where he was. Leo waited outside his building for 5 days before he finally left. Julian's heart felt hollowed out. He told himself that Leo was the hero of the story. He never belonged to a villain like him anyway. But he couldn't stop himself. Like a crazed fan, he searched for news of Leo every day. His name began to appear more frequently. He secured his first round of funding. His new tech company's stock soared. He built his empire. He became the man he was always meant to be. Then, 5 years later, Julian woke up to a screaming red headline on his phone. It announced the engagement of Leo Carter, CEO of Zenith Corp, to superstar Skylar Reed. As he stared, his phone rang. It was his second-in-command, his voice frantic, telling him that the company's CR lines were frozen. He had come full circle. His ruin had arrived, just 5 years ahead of schedule. His family forced him into a blind date, a desperate attempt to secure a bailout from another wealthy family. The man was arrogant and dismissive, telling Julian he wasn't his type. Then, the man's eyes lit up, and he shot to his feet, waving frantically at someone behind Julian. Julian turned, expecting to see a girlfriend or a celebrity. It was Leo. The man fawned over him, shaking his hand effusively. Leo maintained a polite smile, his eyes meeting Julian's. He remarked on the coincidence of seeing him there and congratulated him on his position in his family's company. Julian managed a clipped response. The date, now eager to please, happily explained that their families had set them up to get to know each other, practically screaming that they were on a blind date. Leo's smile didn't falter, but something shifted behind his eyes. He glanced at the platinum band on his own finger. He said he wouldn't interrupt them. Then, the light from the restaurant's chandeliers glinted off the ring, a sharp, painful spark. Before leaving, he shook Julian's hand. For a fleeting second, Julian felt a faint, deliberate pressure from Leo's fingers in his palm. He told himself it was his imagination. A week later, the man from the date asked him to dinner again. Julian, drowning in negotiations with banks, reluctantly agreed. The man had booked out the entire restaurant, yet seemed completely distracted. Julian politely suggested that if he had other matters to attend to, he could leave. The man snapped back to attention, raised his glass, and offered a brittle toast. The red wine tasted bitter. As Julian set his glass down, the world began to swim. His vision blurred, and he slipped into darkness. He awoke in a bedroom. Leo was looking down at him, calmly removing his tailored suit jacket. He smiled and said it was good to see him again. The years had sharpened Leo's features, lending him a harder, more formidable maturity. He walked over, undoing his cufflinks, and gently touched Julian's dry lips. It was obvious this was Leo's doing. Julian tried to push him away, but Leo caught his hand, his teeth lightly grazing his knuckles. A small smile played on Leo's lips. He murmured that he could finally see him again, and that Julian couldn't leave him anymore. From a nearby table, he picked up a small silver bell. Julian's mind, foggy from the drugs, recognized it. It was the bell a sales associate had pushed on him as part of a package deal at that luxury store. Something to play with a pet. He had bought it and immediately tossed it to Leo. He couldn't believe he had kept it all this time. The faint, tinkling sound was the only thing he could hear. A terrible thought surfaced. Leo had been driven mad by his absence. A storm was brewing outside. A flash of lightning was followed by a deafening clap of thunder. Fear coiled in Julian's stomach. He tried to reason with him, reminding him that he was engaged to Skylar Reed, that this was wrong. Leo just watched him silently. Julian's voice cracked as he started shouting, telling him to get away. Leo finally moved his lips, whispering that if this was hell, they would go together. Julian's thoughts grew more chaotic. Tears streamed down his face. He babbled that they had to follow the rules, that he didn't want Leo to be erased. At that, Leo stopped. He straightened up and repeated the word, rules, as if it were a foreign concept. Then he smiled, a true, brilliant smile, and kissed the tip of Julian's nose. He told him he knew all about it. Julian's crying ceased. His eyes widened. Leo sighed, wiped away his tears, and then said something that made the world stand still. He asked Julian why he was so certain their first meeting had been only 5 years ago. Director Vance. Director Vance. That was Julian's title in the first timeline. It was what Leo had always called him. The wind howled, and rain lashed against the window panes. Leo leaned in close, his voice a low whisper in Julian's ear. He confessed he had been watching him, had hired a private detective to photograph his every move. He told him how he, too, had realized he was a character in a story, long before Julian did. He had tried to defy his fate, but every time he chose Julian over Skylar, the world would reset. But after countless cycles, he found a loophole. The story only required him to hit the major plot points, achieve success, and become engaged to Skylar. The future beyond that was a blank page. So he had devised a plan. He baited Julian into acting out of character, triggering a full reset that brought them both back to the beginning. The engagement to Skylar was a business deal, the final objective required to complete the novel. The moment the news broke, the story ended. The rules vanished. There would be no more resets. He asked Julian if he remembered the first thing he said to him in this timeline. Julian, dazed, shook his head. Leo didn't answer directly. He just smiled, his arms tightening around Julian's waist. He leaned in and whispered the words Julian had spoken after knocking him to the ground in that shoe store all those years ago. He told him that the master's waist was even finer. A slow smile spread across Julian's face. A great, shuddering sigh of relief escaped him. He was finally free. His arms wrapped around Leo's neck, and for the first time, without fear or reservation, he held on.